This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Good evening. This is your host, Ray. Welcome to the Late Show on Teachers Talk Radio. Very late on this Monday evening, we will be discussing student aspirations. Are they different between London and the rest of the UK? If they are, what are schools meant to do about that? We'll find out.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
So, on today's show, we have a very special guest, fellow teacher Anna, who is here to share her experiences in this area. So I'm Ray. I've taught in London schools for 12 years, in a number of them around London. I've recently moved to Derby, which is a very different experience, and this is very new for me. A lot of it's very new, and the students are very new, and what they plan on doing with their lives is very new for me. So I've been thinking a lot in the past few months about what that means and the differences between the students that I've taught in London and the students that I'm currently teaching in Derby. So obviously my experience in Derby is limited at the moment, but the differences are very stark. So I've been talking to a number of educational professionals about this and come across a wide range of opinions and experiences about how students' aspirations and their dreams and their visions for their careers and their goals in terms of exams and how all of that fits together for their futures, how they're different in London compared to the rest of the country in different places outside of Derby as well. So in trying to get my head around what this actually means and whether there is a clear difference between our great capital and the rest of this entire nation, we're going to talk through some of that tonight and see if we can maybe get to the bottom of it. Are my hypotheses correct? And if so, if there is a difference in aspirations, generally speaking, between London students, if there is something about London, living in London, growing up in London, attending a London school, if there is something about that somehow influences students' aspirations in a way that is different to the rest of the country, then to me the questions are twofold. One, are London schools making enough of the resources they have available? Are London schools aware that their students have different aspirations and they're maybe on a slightly different wavelength? And what are London schools doing about that? But also, because London, I don't personally believe, is the center of the universe, how are schools in the rest of the country addressing this? Is it something that is being addressed? Is it something that needs to be addressed? Are schools elsewhere in the UK actively trying to close the gap that may or may not exist? What's being done and what should we be doing, really? So, again, a bit of background on me. I obviously am not from here. I've lived in the Bahamas. I've lived in Canada. That's where I attended school. So my educational experience only began in this country when I came here in 2010 to do my PGCE. So I know the UK, I know London as a teacher, as an education professional, but I didn't grow up here, so I don't have that perspective. And I also don't have the deeply entrenched class perspective that I think also plays a huge part in here, but we'll get to that later. And I'd like to introduce our guest, Anna, if Anna is able to join us in a moment. Then she'll give us a bit of background about herself as well and where she's gone to school, where she's worked, and what she's up to now. That would be great. Anna, are you here?
Hi, Ray. Yes, I am. Hi.
Excellent. You're very welcome.
So I am Anna, and I've taught also in London for a few years. I'm also from London. I grew up in London. I taught there for, I can't really remember, 5 or 6 years, I think, before moving up to Edinburgh. So I'm currently been at school for 4 years in Edinburgh, and so I'm here to maybe bring a little bit of a Scottish dimension to this conversation.
Edgy.
Mm.
You have a rather different education system up there, don't you?
Yeah, it is very different, more different than maybe I knew when I was going up there. But yeah, there's different exams, different curriculum, um, different potentially outlook, and dare I say it, a better work-life balance. So,
Oh, that stings.
oh yeah, I'm sorry, but it's true. In my experience, anyway.
Okay, so let me tell you my hypothesis in clear terms, I hope, and then you can tell me what you think about it. So my hypothesis is this: about there's something about London that, almost without realizing it, without students, without teachers, without staff fully appreciating this, there's something about London that causes young people to just naturally, almost through osmosis, through every second of their existence, be more aware of different industries, different opportunities, different options, different paths that they could follow. There's something about living there and being educated there and growing up there. Everything seems reachable, things seem touchable, things seem within the realm of possibility. Being around all of these different industries, and I'm an English teacher, you're an English teacher. I've also taught drama, you've also taught drama. So we tend to be kind of creative humanities language type teachers. So I'm talking about those industries and that aspect of culture as well. But I also mean things like finance, you know, money, these massive parts of London that you'd think would be very appealing to a wide range of young people. You know, money, who doesn't want that? All of that is so within grasp for them, and they're grown up with the nearness of it. They can hop on the Jubilee line and get anywhere. You know, they can just get there so quickly and so easily. It's seeable, it's touchable, even if they haven't been central. And teaching in Croydon, it's shocking the number of students that have not been central except to go shopping on Oxford Street at Christmas time. They know it's there, it's around them, it's in the air. So they have this awareness of these different industries and these different potential careers. That's not true elsewhere. So I'm not even talking about the tiny village school in the middle of Norfolk or all the way up in Scotland. I'm talking about other cities, proper cities in this country that don't have the breadth of culture and industry that exists in London. Students just don't see themselves in it because they're not in it. It's there's a distance to it. There's something far away. They don't grow up taking it for granted that this is something they could do or this is something they could be a part of. So my theory is that situation, that dynamic, means that so many young people grow up in London feeling that so many more things are attainable, and that influences, without parents even trying, without schools even trying, it influences their aspirations and their assumptions about what they can and cannot do, their beliefs in what they can and cannot achieve. And I firmly believe that is the case, and that is that geography, essentially, the way this country is set up, and London being this black hole that sucks up absolutely everything. I believe that is the primary difference for these aspirational differences that I have noticed, and I hope you can contribute on one way or another. So then the questions that follow, assuming that my theory is correct, which it may not be, but I do believe it is, there are two questions that follow. Number one, are London schools doing enough to make use of these opportunities and these resources that they have? Because I'm not convinced that they are. And I would like to hear later on from some other people who have opinions on this about whether schools in London are, excuse me, aware of what they have, aware of their immense privileges, and are they doing enough to connect their students to it and make the most of that? The flip side of that is point number 2: are schools elsewhere in the UK aware of it, and are they doing enough to close that cultural and aspirational gap? And really, given the limitations that schools have and the immense pressure that we're under and everything, all this pressure that is put upon us all of the time to do everything under the sun, what physically can we do in other schools elsewhere to bring, I hate saying this, and this is not what I mean, but it is in a way, to bring London to these students? It shouldn't have to be that way, but it is. So, Anna,
Mm-hmm.
do you think my theory carries any weight, or am I completely on the wrong path here?
I would say your theory is in part correct, but I think there's also lots of aspects that I think we're missing out on when it comes to aspirations.
Okay.
So I think, London is definitely, like as you say, a cultural epicenter of the UK. There's no avoiding it. You can feel that being in Derby. You can feel that being in a tiny place on the southwest. I'm sure you can feel that even in Scotland, which is, a whole other nation. And even in the capital city being Edinburgh, you can feel that pull of London in many ways. A lot of my students, are very excited when they hear that I'm from London. Probably for the wrong reasons.
Mine are excited too when they find out I work there, and then the accent clicks and they get very confused.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they also kind of look at me strangely because that I don't fit the typical TikTok version of a Londoner that they've seen online or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in saying that, I think that, it would be great to hear from some teachers who teach in Manchester, who teach in Liverpool or
Mm-hmm.
Newcastle or Birmingham, um, you know, with their perspectives on this, because I think um, in my in my in my experience being in Scotland, there's a certain different pull, right? There's a certain different energy that is also pulling people towards Edinburgh and pulling people towards Glasgow, especially in that area around the central belt of Scotland, where in its own way sees itself as kind of the center of the world, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of the creative industries, a lot of the arts taking place in Glasgow or Edinburgh, a lot of the finance taking place in those two cities as well, a lot of the business opportunities, etc., etc., etc. So I see in my students that I teach, um, uh, in a sense, they are being pulled to London, but in a sense, they also have opportunities around them, and maybe it's been slow to pick up after COVID. That
Mm-hmm.
there are these opportunities that are available, and we're only really having maybe the first or second full year of being back in the full swing of things. People organising trips, people going that extra mile to expose students to wider opportunities that are out there. And we are lucky, being in Edinburgh, that it doesn't take, a full day on a coach to travel 3.5 hours at 5 o'clock in the morning to go and visit the National Library of Scotland, for example, that I took my
Mm.
students on last year. We had another school there who had come all the way from Fraserburgh, which is on the coast up near Aberdeen,
Mm.
to talk in the to have the same workshop, and my students got a lot out of that. I'm sure their students got a lot out of that. Um, but the difference in effort and time it took for me to arrange that, which was just basically, yeah, come to school, normal time. We're just going to head out, just going to hop on the bus. You know, you'll be home at, 4 o'clock as normal, compared to a whole day on the coach for these guys
Mm-hmm.
is much harder. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of the cultural institutions in England as well, they're centered around London. A colleague of mine was saying that the BFI, she worked there for a little while, and she had lots and lots and lots of school groups coming in, but mainly from London and the surrounding area. And the further away you got, the harder it became to take a school group there for the day. And she said,
Mm-hmm.
she was reminded, she's from Inverness. She has um, she was she noticed that even though the BFI had the film funding and education funding for the whole of the UK, hardly any teachers in Scotland knew what the BFI was, or had any access to their
Yeah.
educational resources at that time anyway. So I
And
think
it's such a, sorry to interrupt you. It's such a different experience. So I know you can go watch, for example, the BFI just reminded me of National Theatre.
mhm,
And you can go to the cinema and you can see a National Theatre live production on the screen in the cinema. But that is so, as anyone who's been to any show, any theater ever knows well enough, it's such a different experience experiencing it live. And we want these young people to have these vivid, physical experiences, real
mhm.
life, real time live experiences. And that's where, to take them to the cinema instead of taking them to the theater, as much as we would love to say it's a comparable thing, it's absolutely not.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
they just, but what are the options? It come, distance and time and resources. It's incredibly difficult. But sorry, as you were
Well,
saying.
that is absolutely true, and that's the case that I took my students to see the Crucible last year and to see Othello done at National Theatre Live.
Hmm.
And it was similar to uh, a theatre, but it wasn't that same spark and
No,
electricity.
of course not.
Um, and we're munching popcorn on our way through, and they got very excited about the interval, but it's not the same as being in a live theatre audience and having that magic in front of you.
Of
Um,
course not.
but still very worthwhile to do. I think there are those ideas surrounding geography, right? But I think
Yeah.
then maybe we are missing out on some other aspects, right? Class plays an absolutely massive um, uh, plays an absolutely massive role the um, in the aspirations of students,
Hmm.
whether that is in London or elsewhere. I mean, I think you make a good point that um, working class students in London, they are exposed to more of that kind of aspiration that you've talked about. Um,
Hmm.
but I think that's a role. I think also, um, as another one of my colleagues was talking about, it's about the type of aspirations that students have and how that changes across the
Hmm.
country as well.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And I think if we're on that note, if we're talking about aspirations, I think we need to operationalize what we mean by that. What do we mean by aspiration? Because when I was speaking to a colleague recently and saying, it's just so different here. What the kids are envisioning for themselves and their futures and what their aims are and their goals are. And I think she assumed, because I'm a teacher in a school, that I was naturally talking about exam results and the grades that the students were aspiring to achieve. And obviously that's significant. Obviously that's incredibly important. And I have noticed a difference with that as well. But what's really struck me, and I think the bigger issue is their futures, like their wider aspirations, their aspirations to contribute and be involved in the world around them, their aspirations with regard to their careers, so they can be adequately informed, be familiar with as many different opportunities as possible, and then choose a career that they have a genuine passion for. So when they're waking up every morning, they feel that why, they know why they're doing this, and they actually maybe want to go to work, or at the very least don't hate it or resent it because they chose a career in a place where they felt they didn't have a choice, or that was just the assumption or the given that they were going to go and do. And I'm obviously, we are all concerned with students getting the best possible exam results and doing very well academically and having high academic aspirations. But again, to me, looking at the bigger picture and caring about young people turning into successful adults, exam results matter to me most because of the doors that they open and the opportunities that they create for these young people. A 7 or an 8 or a 9, those are just numbers. But what are they going to do for you later? How are they going to keep your options open? What are they going to present you with? What are they going to allow you to do once you leave your GCSEs or you leave your A levels? That's so much more important than a number on a piece of paper. And I think when we talk about aspirations, we need to be aware exactly what you said, of there being different aspirations for different people in different places, and not every student is going to have those high academic aspirations for a variety of reasons. Do you think, have you noticed, being outside, since you've left London, being outside of London, that students' academic aspirations are different from what you're used to?
Um, I would say it comes down, depends on the student. I teach in a school which is quite got a mix of backgrounds and of kind of wealth indicators. There are some quite wealthy areas in the catchment, and quite working class areas in the catchment as well. And I think it can come down to definitely the student, and definitely where they've been brought up and what environment they've been brought up in. Some students they are aiming for great academic attainment. Other students, they're not so bothered. And really, in Scotland, there is much more flexibility. It's not like you sit your GCSEs once, or and if you don't pass that one time, you have to keep repeating them until the day you graduate or whatever. It's definitely like you should in S4 be sitting your Nat 5s, but if Nat 5s are a bit too much for you, you can sit a Nat 4, which is an easier exam. You get the Nat 4 qualification, maybe
Wait,
try
whoa,
for
whoa,
Nat
whoa, whoa,
5
whoa.
next
Wait,
year.
are you
Yeah,
telling me that
sorry.
the exams in Scotland are actually, there's flexibility to tailor them
Oh
to individual
yeah,
students, and not everyone has
yes,
to sit the same exam at the same time?
yes,
What a novel
absolutely.
concept.
I
How
know, I know.
fabulous. My goodness.
Um, and even if those students don't achieve their Nat 5s, and they leave school at the end of 5th year, which many do. So at the time that they're 16, we don't have compulsory education until you're 18. They move on to college, where they've got more chances to sit those Nat 5s, but they can also just retrain and do something much more practical, like get a trade.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. And sorry, go on.
I think in Scottish schools there isn't this. You were talking about, we think about aspiration as being the exam results. In many ways, that's true still, but in many ways, that's really not the be all and end all for Scottish schools. There's not the same focus on league tables, and there's not the same focus on, grading a school determined purely on that. I mean, there is still some, but it is
Yeah.
not. Teachers don't feel the same pressure, and I would argue that probably in England there is a lot more pressure on the teacher for their own sake rather than the student's sake. Don't you say?
Absolutely. And I think so often in England, everywhere in England, that, student aspirations and raising student aspirations is really just a cover. If by that they mean raising students' attainment on exams, it's just a cover for the school's own anxiety about the league tables and the Ofsted report.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of pressure on schools and on teachers is kind of filtered down to, the teaching staff, the just teachers, as being for the students, when actually, that's not why you're pushing this here. But anyway, I would like to hear more from different teachers in different areas, and we're getting a few messages through that I'm going to read in a moment. So if you're listening and you have input from other areas of the country, particularly more rural areas or deprived areas outside of major cities, that would be useful. Although hearing from teachers in major cities in the UK that are not London would also be very interesting. So please do message or feel free to call in if that applies to you.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishing professional development books and resources to support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Have you checked out their latest releases? Use the code JCTTR2324 for 20% off your order. Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading.
In today's educational environment, students and teachers are juggling a mix of face-to-face, online and blended learning courses. Canvas by Instructure helps teachers navigate these diverse learning experiences with a user-friendly virtual learning environment that offers flexible access to courses and a consistent learning experience, all while streamlining everyday teaching processes. The world's best schools and universities are using Canvas to create dynamic courses, collaborate seamlessly, and access actionable data that drives student success.
On the 24th to the 26th of January 2024, Bet UK is back, and even better for educators. New for 2024, Table Talks empowers educators to collaborate openly and connect deeply with like-minded individuals in the education space, as well as tech user labs, the brilliant new tutorials and working groups at BET, where technology users will learn how to get more out of their institution's tech from the top education technology experts in the world. Whatever your goal, you'll find it at BET 2024. Educators go free. Get your tickets today at www.uk.betshow.com/visitor-registration.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The BBC News website reports on announcements that GCSE students in England will get formulae and equations in their maths and science exams for summer 2024. The Department for Education has asked the exam regulator to extend previous support for another year to limit the impact of COVID. Most students who were due to sit GCSE exams next summer were in Year 7 when the first lockdown began. Teaching unions have welcomed the proposal, which is being consulted on. The DfE said it would mean enhanced formulae and equation sheets for pupils in maths, physics and combined science. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan said these pupils will be the last to experience 2 years of national closures during secondary school, and that it was right that they get additional support. She went on to say it was disappointing that the decision had been made so late on, as many pupils will take mocks in the coming months or so. The union ASCL welcomed the consultation, but argued that the provision of support materials should be permitted, as it would reduce some of the stress of exam preparation and allow pupils to focus on core knowledge and skills. Prior to this announcement, exams in England had been due to return to 2019 arrangements. Exams were cancelled across the UK in 2020 and 2021, and grades were based on teacher assessments. When students returned to exam halls in 2022, they were given extra support. Some measures remained in place for exams in England in 2023, with exams in the same subject spaced more apart, formulae and equation sheets in some subjects, and not being tested on unfamiliar vocabulary in modern foreign languages. But, unlike the rest of the UK, students in England were not given information on topics on which they were being tested. England was also the only nation this summer to bring back in line with 2019, with Wales and Northern Ireland planning a slower return. As a result, the drop in pass grades was steepest in England. In another week of political drama, the latest government reshuffle has seen the return of many familiar faces. For education, it means the return of former Education Secretary Damien Hinds as Schools Minister. He replaces Nick Gibb, who resigned to pursue a job in the diplomatic service. A report in FE Week focuses on Hinds' previous experience leading the DFE between January 2019 and July 2019, during which time the government completed reforms to technical education. Hinds has previously said, after his 2019 departure, that there was still work to do on social mobility. He was replaced by Gavin Williamson. The Education Secretary stated Mr Hinds is hugely experienced and who would continue to build on Nick Gibb's record of driving up standards. Mr Hinds is the sixth person to hold the Schools Minister role in 18 months. The Glasgow Times reports on what it calls the long-term decline in education standards after the Institute of Fiscal Studies looked at Scotland's disappointing history in PISA figures, an international measure. Since 2012, Scottish scores in maths and science have declined. The figures also show a wide gap between the richest and poorest in maths, science and reading, but more well-off students also underperform when compared to their English counterparts. Large increases in spending and big reforms such as the Curriculum for Excellence do not seem to have translated into higher performance, according to Andrew McKendrick, one of the report's authors. A Scottish Conservative education spokesman said the report should act as a wake-up call for the SNP, and Scottish Labour said it exposed the damage the SNP has done. Finally, Schools Week reports on the invitation to schools to request a free portrait of King Charles II under a new government scheme. The scheme is costing £8 million. Those wishing to take up the offer must apply before the 2nd of February 2024. The King will be shown in ceremonial dress and delivery of the images will take place between February and April next year. The A3 size picture will be printed on high-quality paper and be in a glazed frame. Schools which display pictures of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth will not be obliged to take down her portrait. Suggested placement of the image of His Majesty is reception areas or a function room or similar location. Schools will not be able to see the portrait before submitting requests. The image is not being funded from school budgets, but out of a separate pot similar to the scheme which provided a free book to every primary school pupil to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in 2021. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
So, there's some interesting Scottish news for you there, Anna.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
know it's a totally different system, and I know you, as you said, are a separate nation, but we are part of the UK.
Yes.
It is all relevant. We are all one, really. So I've got some messages, some texts have come in from. I mean, I've got some personal messages, but some texts have come in to the show from a number of people. We've got Paul who's saying that where he is in the Northwest, raising children's aspirations is a tricky issue in deprived areas. And this is exactly what I'm saying. It's in the Midlands where I am right now. It feels incredibly difficult to get students to raise their aspirations. But I feel like in order to raise their aspirations, you have to present them with things to aspire to. And this to me is the whole issue. How do you bring these different options? How do you bring these different careers to the students in an effective way? So I ran a little informal survey with some of my students over the past week. So I polled 3 different classes. Science. Polled 3 different classes about their career aspirations and what they wanted to do when they're older, where they got this idea from, like what inspired them, what their families wanted them to do, if anything. Were they, being pushed toward a particular career path? Did they think they were going to be successful at what they wanted to do? Some of those answers were depressing, to say the least. And did they know that the training or education required to achieve those goals? So wide range of responses, which was enlightening for me as their teacher. Including, I asked my form as well, my year 7 form, bless them. So that was really good for me to know. But in terms of what we're discussing, what was most relevant, what was most concerning to me, was the percentage of students who had genuinely no idea, or at least not one they were comfortable sharing anonymously with me. The other two were anonymous, but I got the names on the forum group for my own personal reasons. So the first question was, what do you want to do? What are your ideas for your career? What are you leaning towards? What do you want to do when you're older? And 30% of my year 8 class, 30%, 30, said they had absolutely no idea. Now, the schools I worked in London, year 8s, there would have maybe been 1 or 2 kids that genuinely had not a clue. There would have been a handful more that definitely would not have been comfortable discussing what they wanted to do with the whole class or even with me. But in an anonymized survey, the fact that almost a third of them claim they have no idea what their career goals or aspirations are is shocking to me. 40% of my form, my year 7 form, said they had no idea what they wanted to do. And what scares me the most is 40, though this is a slightly smaller cohort, 40% of my year 11 class said they had no idea what they wanted to do career-wise. These students are currently applying to sixth forms and colleges and apprenticeships, and they don't know what they want to do. That, to me, that is unheard of. And with the experiences I've had in London schools, and particularly around work experience and careers, there's just no way that many students would have got to year 11 claiming to have no idea what they want to do with their lives, or what they want to do career-wise. It simply wouldn't happen. And in my South London school, careers-wise, there are so many opportunities to present these young people with these different options. They have there's bring your daughter to work day. It was a girls' school I was working at last. There are so many different work experience opportunities. Last year, I had to check up on a few students in their work experience visits to see how they were going. I went to Diane Abbott's office, Diane Abbott's actual literal office in Westminster, to check up on a student doing a work placement there. Went to Warner Music, the actual offices in that ridiculously gorgeously decorated office. You go to all these amazing places, and our students are there, and they're working with these people, and they're learning these skills, and they're experiencing these places and these jobs, and the potential for their own futures. And it's just, you would never get almost half of a year 11 class saying they had absolutely no idea. They might have pie in the sky dreams. It might be totally unrealistic, but they would have something that they were driving themselves towards. And getting those highly scientific poll results was shocking in kind of the worst possible way. And it just made me wonder what we are doing. What can we do given the financial resource limitations to boost these students' experiences? And I went and I talked to our careers advisor, because there's a huge number of pupil premium students in my school, as there were in my last school in London as well. So it is more or less on par. And said, what are the options? Where do the kids go? What do they do? And she was saying a lot of the similar things that the London students did at my previous school in South London. And she said what surprised me, actually. She also said, because this is such a deprived area where I am in Derby, that actually there is some government funding. There are a lot of programs available for students to experience different career paths and kind of broaden their horizons a little bit. And that was comforting. But I also thought, well, if my school in London was a deprived postcode as well, so clearly that's not where any kind of the differences are from. These opportunities that are presented to my pupil premium students in Derby, for example, are also maybe not the same exact experiences, but opportunities are also being presented to London students who are socioeconomically deprived. So that's not filling a gap, if you see what I'm saying. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. They're not actually filling any sort of gap. They're helping everybody, which is brilliant, and I love that. But it's not solving the problem of 3 kids in a class not being able to tell me what they want to do versus almost half in year 11. So what can we do? And when I say aspirations now, I'm talking about careers-wise specifically. What can we do? So we have a listener that has said she's working in a school in a careers capacity. Allison, are you here?
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hello, Allison. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what your experiences are, and if you're involved in careers, how that is, and what your experience of all of this is?
Yeah, of course. So I am the careers lead and the careers advisor for a secondary school in South London.
Okay.
I'm very lucky that I have an amazing support from my senior leadership team, which I find when I speak to other professionals within sort of the careers area that they don't have that. You're talking about the aspirations. I would say a lot of my students come from very low income backgrounds. I don't know how many are pupil premium and free school meals, but it's quite a high majority of them. But that doesn't seem to have any difference when I meet with them individually, because I meet with them. So we're very lucky. We do things with our girls or with our students all the way through the year. So we also have Take Your Daughter to Work Day for the year 7 students. The year 8 is a little bit quieter. Year 9, we have a careers fair for them where we invite people in from different industries. We have people in from universities, from colleges, apprenticeship providers, just to give them ideas of what's actually out there. Because as you say, Ray, it's a really good point for them to know what is out there. There's so many different opportunities for young people these days that I certainly didn't get, and probably not even 10 years ago. Year 10, we have work experience, so the students can go absolutely anywhere within reason. And we have a massive range of placements from like nurseries to working with going into Parliament. We've had students working in as architects, we've had them on building sites, we've had them in record companies, we've had them all over the place. Then a year 11, we kind of a little bit more intense. I meet with them all individually. Again, we take the lower, probably the students that have got lower attainment, lower academic ability. We take them to colleges so that they can find out what courses are available to them and where they can lead in. I think it's giving them information as much as you can from as young age as possible. And I also include the parents in that as well. So I send out emails to parents of any opportunities that I think the students would be interested and would be beneficial to them, so that the parents are also aware, because I think it's having that support from the senior leadership team, having parents being aware, and again, having as many people coming in to talk to the students all the way through their time in school, so that they know exactly what is out there. But I would say, and hearing what you said about the your year 11s, was it 40% you said didn't know?
Yeah,
I would say
40%, nearly half of my year
crazy.
11 class.
Well,
Yeah.
as I say, I meet with all the year 11s, and I'd say we've got about 200 and something in each year group. Probably 20 out of the 200. I'm not a maths teacher. My maths isn't great, but that's a pretty high percentage of children who know what they want to do. And again, it could be completely unrealistic. Like, a lot of them want to be doctors and they're not quite going to make it. However, what I will show them is, no, you might not be a doctor, but there is amazing careers that you can do in the health sector with the grades that you're getting, so that you're not going to be forcing yourself to try and train for something that you're not ever going to get to. But yeah, they know, and I think it's having that introduction from such a young age. We have online platforms that we use that, yes, there are a lot out there that cost money, but there's also a lot out there that are free. There is just so much out there for young people. It's just a shame. I don't quite know how to get other
Yeah.
schools to kind of take up on that. But yeah, as I say, for
Well,
me,
this
aspirations
is
is
the thing,
not a
and
thing.
it's it's so good to hear from a careers lead in London who sounds like, from everything you've just said, it sounds like you have a supportive SLT, you have parents, you're able to get parents on board and involved, which is so important because so many of our parents in every school I've worked at will they can't necessarily help their children on their own because they don't know the options out there. They don't know how to help their children, or they're not aware enough of what is out there to be able to
Yeah,
pass that on to their children. So to have the parents on board is absolutely important.
yeah,
And it really does sound like you're doing everything, your school is doing everything it possibly can to raise aspirations for your students. And I
yeah,
love the fact that this your school and you seem to appreciate the range of opportunities that are there in London, because as concerned as I am about the rest of the country, I personally, as a classroom teacher and during my time as head of year, even when I had a bit more of an overview of what was going on, I really did not appreciate the differences until I worked in a school outside of the city. That was, you hear things and you read things about aspirations in deprived areas, et cetera, and it doesn't really hit you how vast that difference is until you experience it. And my school now is absolutely lovely, and our SLT are unbelievably supportive, and we have an amazing careers lead that I've only very recently been able to meet, and it really does sound like they're also doing absolutely everything they can from a careers point of view. But it just, at this point, doesn't feel like enough, and it's not because my school isn't doing enough. I feel like it's there are bigger issues at play here that we need to find other ways to work through and to benefit the students. So thank you so much, Alison, for your input. That was really,
oh, you're very welcome.
really
Thank you.
valuable. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we also have a text from Paul. Again, he says, I've been in primary for 15 years. Many can tell me that they want to be a vet or a prime drink seller. But I also have children who told me that they don't need to get a job because they can stay at home like mom and dad and look after their many, many children. Yes. Yes, that does concern me. So it I have taught many students, and I have taught students everywhere I've been whose sole ambition is to do anything they can to stay at home. But I feel like, and again, the percentages are definitely going to vary depending on where you are, but I feel like there is always going to be a small percentage of students who have the internal drive, who have the internal motivation, personal motivation to do the best they can at everything they can do and give themselves the best opportunities available. And if they have a goal, they're going to set wild goals for themselves and chase them until they get them, or not, and they'll find a plan B. There are always going to be those students. There are also always going to be students for whom school is not working, and they don't don't want to be there. They genuinely 100% do not care, and there's very little anyone can do to change that. There are always going to be those extremes. It's a matter of, for me, the concern is that, the other 90% in the middle, and those are the malleable ones. Those are the ones that need support and need to be presented with different opportunities, and they need schools and communities and the government to support them and work with them and allow them opportunities to be their best self. Those are the ones that we need to focus on, rather than the ones who will be just fine, and the ones that they've decided a long time ago that they're going to, as Paul says, stay at home and look after their many, many children. So it's
Ray, on
kind
that
of,
note,
yeah,
may I just talk about an anecdote that I've also
absolutely,
heard
absolutely. Go
from a
ahead.
colleague who was working in Aberdeen, and
Mm-hmm.
she had in Aberdeen, there's a lot of people grow up and they see, especially young males, they see their dads and their brothers go and work offshore for the oil industry, whether that be in an engineering capacity, or they go off and do degrees in geography, or they just go as a pot washer. Whatever it is, it pays excellent money, and they come back home, and they're definitely in Aberdeen. They're the ones who are making that economy turn over, and in that sense, that's their ambition. It's not a particularly female-friendly environment, or a big employer of females, and women and girls in her school, she felt like it was really the girls who had the massive lack of aspiration in that particular context. And their aspirations were, as Paul says, grow up, marry a man who works in oil, and live happily ever after. And their school was doing a lot in terms of financial literacy and financial independence work. And so they were putting on a lot of schemes to help people understand the importance of financial independence and having your own money and being able to not rely on other people. And that's something that they were trying to implement to raise the aspirations of particularly young women in that school. And I think that's something to bear in mind, that sometimes aspiration is not just, doing it all for yourselves and following that wildest dream. Sometimes the aspiration is making sure that you are financially capable and independent and being able to sort yourself out.
Absolutely. And I think we do have to be careful not to try and force our own aspirations onto our students, because as we've said, it's not, some students are not academic and they don't want nines, and you know what, that's okay. My concern is if a student wants to be a bricklayer and they want, I'm picking that because that's what a student told me today they wanted to do. Brilliant. As long as that's actually what you want to do. Because what worries me is that you aren't presented with enough opportunities. You haven't experienced enough. You don't know what's out there. And if you don't know what's out there, how do you know you want to be a bricklayer? Just like if all you've ever known is medicine, how do you know you want to be a doctor? You need to know your options, that you can choose something that you genuinely want to do. And if we don't educate our students adequately in careers and different paths and different options, then they're not making an educated choice and we're failing them. And
absolutely. And I was really interested to hear of all of the online options that there are in terms of exposing students to different career paths and things like that Alison was saying. So that's something I'll definitely be thinking about, and and maybe trying to implement in my own school, because I don't think we have anything like that.
Yeah, I've definitely got a lot of thoughts about implementation for my own school as well.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishing professional development books and resources to support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Have you checked out their latest releases? Use the code JCTTR2324 for 20% off your order. Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading.
In today's educational environment, students and teachers are juggling a mix of face-to-face, online and blended learning courses. Canvas by Instructure helps teachers navigate these diverse learning experiences with a user-friendly virtual learning environment that offers flexible access to courses and a consistent learning experience, all while streamlining everyday teaching processes. The world's best schools and universities are using Canvas to create dynamic courses, collaborate seamlessly, and access actionable data that drives student success.
On the 24th to the 26th of January 2024, Bet UK is back, and even better for educators. New for 2024, Table Talks empowers educators to collaborate openly and connect deeply with like-minded individuals in the education space, as well as tech user labs, the brilliant new tutorials and working groups at Bet, where technology users will learn how to get more out of their institution's tech from the top education technology experts in the world. Whatever your goal, you'll find it at Bet 2024. Educators go free. Get your tickets today at www.uk.betshow.com/visitor-registration.
So another thing that's been brought to my attention, this is why it's so important to talk to your careers advisors and your careers leads within school. There is a whole there are so many theories, Anna, about about different different careers and how young people choose their careers. And I
Oh,
didn't know this
really?
until we had a conversation. Yes, there are. So, for example, there was when I was speaking to our careers advisor and I was explaining this, and I was like, listen, London is different, and you can talk about class and working class aspirations versus upper class aspirations and middle class. You can talk about that all day and all night. Fact remains, except for those extreme cases, that those 90% of kids in the middle they are seriously impacted by where they live. Geography
Yeah.
matters. The culture of the place matters more than I believe anything else. And I was explaining all of this to her, going on at quite some length, and she finally says, "That's opportunity structure theory." I said, "Excuse me?" She's like, "Oh no, there's this whole, I just did this in my master's. There's this whole theory about it." And she told me all about it. So it's so lovely when your own theory and your own idea and your own hypothesis is somehow validated by some academic that you didn't know anything about. So uh, this guy, Ken Roberts, there's this whole opportunity structure theory. He says that it's sociological factors that determine I'm grossly paraphrasing here now, that determine the paths we go down and the careers we choose. And it's basically, it's kind of all an illusion of choice. And it's things like your family and your social class and your location and what's available to you that determines the path you go down. And I was like, this is exactly what I've been saying. Yes, thank you, Ken Roberts. But then I did a bit more reading, and this is where my I majored in sociology at university. Not that you'd know it, because this is where my sociology brain stops. He also says, and what my understanding of it is, that we're so limited because of these factors that there's very little individual input, and we really, he doesn't say should. I didn't see the word should. I don't think he's talking in shoulds. I think he's talking in what is rather than what should be. But it sounds a bit like we should just, or we do just make the most of it and kind of adapt our aspirations to our lot in life and kind of accept the cards that we've been dealt and accept our fate, so to speak. And that's what maybe bothers me about this. And that's where I feel like some other theories, again, me and my pitiful attempt at research. So Bill Law has this community interaction theory, which I think is a little bit more middle ground. But I feel like if all we do is just accept that our parents have never left this area of the country and everyone around us is a bricklayer, so we're going to be a bricklayer too. Or this is Derby, there's a huge engineering industry here. Everyone in my family works for Rolls-Royce, so I'm going to go be an engineer at Rolls-Royce, not having any concept of what that means or what you need to get there. Are we, that doesn't seem right to me, whether it's something that's academically good in quotation marks, or whether it's something that's more hands-on builder type job. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're just doing what you're doing because you feel you should be doing it, or you have zero awareness of other options, then that's your society, your influences, your culture. I think your school is failing you. So I get the influences, and I 100% see that happening, but I feel like it's our job to make sure these kids know everything that's out there, and that these young people can make educated decisions about whether they want to be an engineer or a bricklayer or something entirely different. And
Oh, absolutely. I think
I'm
that
just not.
also comes down to those students who might be told a lot of the time, you have to be a doctor, you have to be a
Mm-hmm.
lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way, they are not being given that freedom of choice to, design their own path in
Yeah.
life. I think
Yeah.
I think there's there's the idea of London in particular. I think when we're talking about society, how much easier it is for students who are in big cities, let's say, to have the aspiration of going to university when it doesn't mean leaving their hometown, when it doesn't, if if money and cost is a factor, which it is for so many young students as well, to being near, to being able to live at home and still attend university is one of the ways to bring those cost factors down massively.
Absolutely. Well,
and London has the range of universities and higher education
it does.
facilities to do that.
Well, since we can't rebuild the country or change the whole world, I think we're going to have to stop there for tonight. But thank you so much for joining and contributing your Scottish perspective. Very much appreciated. And I feel like I've gained a bit more of a perspective other than just my two city experiences. So thank you very much for your contributions.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me.
And I hope everyone has a lovely remainder of the evening.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.